Hello, Paloma Health family. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for asking so many great questions. So I want to pop on here and answer them for you. So the next question is, what are the early warning signs of a thyroid problem and how to be proactive? So the majority of the people that do have a diagnosis of thyroid problem usually is hypothyroidism, and the early warning signs are symptoms like extreme fatigue, weight loss resistance, or you're gaining weight for no reason at all, constipation, anxiety, your hair starts thinning or falling out, dry skin, brittle nails. Those are some of the more common ones. Brain fog is a really common one as well. When you start seeing those come on, those could definitely be early warning signs that your thyroid is just a little bit sluggish. The big thing that I would do with that is definitely make sure you're getting a full thyroid panel. And when you're talking about a full thyroid panel, you need to get TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies checked. That is very crucial to at least start the process to be proactive to make sure that your thyroid is in check. So the next question is, how much intermittent fasting is healthy with Hashimoto's? Intermittent fasting can be very tricky. Some people do very well with it with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, and some do not. More often than not, what I see is they actually don't do as well with intermittent fasting, maybe a few times a week, but every day probably does not work. And one of the reasons is about 60% or so of thyroid hormone conversion from inactive T4 to active T3 happens in the liver. The liver has to have glucose in order for this to happen. So if you're doing intermittent fasting, you're really fasting for a very extended period of time. You're not going to have that glucose for that thyroid hormone conversion. So I do recommend being very careful with it and actually working with a practitioner if you're doing it. And if you do it, probably not a daily thing. Again, it's very person dependent. I know some people who have Hashimoto's and do great with it, but they probably have all the other underlying things kind of addressed. So the next question is, does thyroid affect sleep? And the short answer is absolutely yes. So one of the ways that this can really affect sleep is your thyroid is very interconnected to your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are what release cortisol. And when your thyroid is off, whether it's fast or slow, it's going to send signaling to your adrenal glands to release more cortisol or to not release more cortisol. That can mess up your circadian rhythm, and your circadian rhythm, what makes you go to sleep at night, stay to sleep, wake up in the morning. That's your natural circadian rhythm. So that can really get thrown off when the thyroid is off. The other factor is when you have hypothyroidism, a lot of people are very, very tired. They really crash like later in the afternoon and in the evening. And then all of a sudden the evening time rolls around for bedtime and they're wide awake. And it's simply because that circadian rhythm can get thrown off when you are struggling with a slow thyroid. If you're overly medicated, that will also make you stay awake then because the medication's too much. So the next question is, what changes can we bring into our life to improve thyroid health? So remember, your thyroid is your master gland. It controls a lot of things. Dietary things can really bog down the thyroid if you're having a lot of inflammatory foods. Things like sugar, dairy for some, gluten, those can all be inflammatory. So really be careful with those and be sure that you're eating your protein sources, lots of veggies. Good starchy carbs can really help as well. And tackling your liver is really important because so much thyroid hormone conversion happens there. So really make sure you're checking in on all the toxins and things you're putting in your body and on your body. And stress is a huge one. There's so much that can happen when you're under stress. You can inhibit thyroid hormone conversion. You can actually inhibit TSH from being released from your brain to give you your thyroid hormones. So really, really, really focus on stress management and what you can do to bring those stress levels down to improve your thyroid health. So the next question is, do you need to give up gluten if the only marker on your thyroid panel that's elevated is TPO? So TPO is thyroid peroxidase antibodies. My suggestion is anytime there's antibodies present to always get rid of gluten. There is that molecular mimicry thing where gluten can mimic your thyroid tissue. And if there's an autoimmune response against your thyroid, when gluten's present, it's going to make that autoimmune response go up higher. So even if you have no symptoms at all, I still suggest it because over time that's going to build up. The longer that the thyroid antibodies are elevated, that's going to start destroying your thyroid tissue. And you don't want to keep that response going on and on and on. So those antibodies are going to be really difficult to lower if you're constantly exposing it to gluten. So like I said, even if you're not having symptoms, I still do suggest to get rid of it to try to help get those antibodies to come down.